because Ricky's place Friday mornings. My uncles were explaining it, pretending like it was.
Oh,
Who
okay,
gave
the
the
class. You get the class.
Okay, because the rabbi had to be in the main. He had the bar mitzvah for Zach. Yeah. So it's good material. That's right. Yes. Joey, you liked it, right? You told me it was good.
Yeah. Ricky did
That's what I'm
the
saying.
Ten Commandments.
Right.
Right, but Ronnie did like an overview of body class, so you see where
No, then he brought into
the
the
Ten Commandments come
Right.
in, and then the comparisons with I love
Pretty
that
much the
one.
same
She
thing.
brought him a coat every year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See
The
the
story
difference.
about the upbringing of two parents. No one ever views it that way. The first 4 chapters of Shemuel are really, in effect, 2 sets of parents, right? 2 sets of parents and how they bring up their kids, because they're both young, right? 2 are high priests and 1 is Shemuel. 1 is successful, the other ones are a bunch of lowlifes. I mean, really lowlifes, not semi-lowlifes. And 1, she's on top of him even before she conceives. She's setting the stage for where she wants him to go. And Eli's the high priest, and when his son's committing horrible sexual promiscuity at the temple, at the sanctuary, with vulnerable women, he tells him, this is not a nice thing I'm hearing. So like, what do you mean this is not a nice thing? It means he's letting them get away with murder. Basically getting, what? He's letting them get away. No, he says not good, but he doesn't. It's not a nice thing. I mean, not a nice thing. He's supposed to kill them. They're predators. I said in the class that if they're in prison, the prisoners kill them. That's how bad it is. And they're stealing meat. They're stealing the sacrificial meat as mafia guys. They send a power guy, and he tells me, you better give it to me or else. So innocent people being compromised, they steal the meat, and therefore they have a lot of food, and they're drunk. That's why he thinks that the girls are drunk, because he thinks Hannah's drunk, because he thinks they're thing. So I said, the two parents are being contrasted. Here's the high priest, how he brings up his child, and here's Hannah and how she brings up her child. He becomes the most famous, after Moshe Rabbeinu, the most famous prophet in the nation's history up till that time. Moshe v'Aaron v'Choanav v'Shmuel v'Koreh Shemo Korim l'Adonai v'Yanim. So that's a powerful comparison. Moshe tells you, Moshe Shmuel lefanai. If Moshe and Shmuel stand before me, I still won't listen. But that doesn't mean if you pray, I won't listen. It means if they would. But he talks about Moshe and Shmuel in the same sentence. So that's what she produces. And what do they produce? They die. They get killed. They get killed for their theft, disrespect. First and foremost, disrespect for the sanctuary. Couldn't kill us. I have no respect for anything.
They broke all 10 commandments.
All over the place. Well, stealing, adultery, and right. Terrible things. Yeah.
Flip side is that
Yeah. What is that?
the flip side, sometimes you try, Shemuel, his son.
Right. But Shemuel did something about it. He sends them out. He sends them out to the desert.
They say America is stronger than. I mean, the influences around you could be stronger than the impact that you have.
Yes, but he does something about it. He doesn't let his kids take over. Shemuel has the same problem, right? First of all, he tells them, when they tell him that, he tells them, because I let them hang around with you. I let them live in town. I let them live as part of the community, and your influence is so sick that that's what happened. So he sends them to Beersheba. The guy who's in power, it's like saying someone has the president of the United States is in Washington, D.C. He sends his kids out to Nome, Alaska, population 22, and he tells them you could stay there. He doesn't banish them completely, but he sends them out where they have no in effect, no power. But Eli leaves them right there. Of course, everything has to be taken, as we always say, with a grain of salt. Remember that Eli is Shemuel's mentor, and Shemuel looks up to him, and there are positive aspects with all of that. He doesn't have to bring up his kids. His kids are a bunch of lowlifes. It's horrible, horrible, horrible things. Beyond horrible. It's beyond. It's worthy of destruction. But he himself, after all is said and done, does have a good impact on Shemuel. So is it him that's having the good impact? Of course, as the question is, or is it his mother, his upbringing? The answer is, of course, it's his mother who has the greater impact on him than anybody else, and therefore he succeeds. So no one looks at it like that, the story about upbringing. What I told him was also that the four elements that exist after the death of Nadav and Avihu, and Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Aaron, you have kashrut, you have child parturient, child being born, brought into the covenant, male and female, because it's 40 and 80 days. And then you have Sara'at, which I say is all about child rearing. It's a long story, not for now. And then you have genital emissions. In the ancient Near East, genital emissions means sexual promiscuity, because you never have genital emissions just like that. Genital emissions are due to venereal, almost always, if there's a genital emission in a male and a female, it's due to promiscuity. Due to, in other words, some kind of venereal disease or syphilis or something like that. So when it's talking about all the four things that are in between the death of Nadav and Avihu, and then the next words are Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Aaron. So you say Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Aaron is how you open up Yom Kippur, right? So the four elements all occur in the Shemuel story, because she has a child, right? She has a child. His daughter-in-law, Eli's daughter-in-law, will have the child whose name is Ikabod, without honor, and what that means. And then there's forbidden food, kashrut, and stealing and eating the forbidden food, sexual promiscuity. That's the fourth element. So every single one of the elements that occur between the death of Nadav and Avihu and Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Aaron, those four things occur in the story. On top of that, what also occurs in the story is the fact that Aaron, the one element I didn't mention is that immediately after your death, it's you can't go into the sanctuary inebriated, drunk. Right. The rabbis all go, what the heck is that law here for? In the middle of nowhere, immediately you can't be drunk. That's the other element that's in the Shemuel story. So every single one of the elements, immediately upon their death until Acharei Mot, every single one of them occur in the Shemuel story. He thinks she's drunk because he's used to seeing drunk people, sad to say, drunk women specifically.
When she's praying?
Yeah. He tells her, you're a drunkard. She tells him, what are you talking about? She's like taken aback, but drunk. She's praying, right? And he's very, he's floored when he says it. So in any event, those that's what I spoke about, and I think it's critical. It happens to be that we are going to today. I'll share my screen over here for you folks who are online, and I want to talk about 75 and its connections. Tonight's going to be easy and quick because I only want to bring up two elements. We've talked about the connections to 75 with first and foremost, not first and foremost, but we were very clear about Esav, right? Esav and Yaakov, and how the Esav wants today, and Yaakov is long term, and so on and so forth. We talked about Eliyahu extensively, because if Eliyahu is the one who says, what's going on? Nothing's happening here. And he tells them about Kol De'Vedaka. That's again 75. We talked about the Berit Ben Betarim, right? But there are two other elements, two other places that touch on 75. And I just want to mention them. And it's, like I say, this is not going to be complicated tonight. Should be able to get it real easy. I hope.
I mean, you're gonna touch on the most difficult book in Tanakh.
Well, first I'm going to do Hannah.
Okay.
Right? Intertextuality with the prayer of Hannah. Scholars have noted parallels between Psalm 75 and everybody knows the prayer of Hannah, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Do I have to read it? Yeah, so you know what? It's a very short piece. Lee, you're familiar with it? Yeah, everybody's familiar with it. So you can read it in English, Morris, Hebrew and English real fast. Because you all know it. Hannah is right at the beginning of Shemuel 1. Samuel, chapter 2, verse 1.
Okay.
Right?
And Hannah prayed. My heart exalts in the Lord. I have.
Yeah,
tried.
wait.
Okay.
Wait. No, you got to do it this way because if you don't hear the Hebrew words, it's haram.
So you said read it in English.
Let me. You should. I said both. Okay. Let me. I'll read Hebrew. You read the English. Right? Sound familiar? Alatz Lebi for you guys who have the book.
$1.61 on Amazon.
All right. Well, how much?
$1.61.
I got 4 more. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Alatz Lebi Badonai, Rama Karni Badonai, the Hafpi al Oibaiki Simati Bishuatecha.
My heart exalts in the Lord. I have triumphed through the Lord. I gloat over my enemies. I rejoice in your deliverance.
I gloat over my enemies. Who's she talking about? Yeah, of course, the famous thing is immediately when you start reading this, what do you mean my mouth? Read it slower again. My
heart exalts in the Lord. I have triumphed through the Lord.
Triumphed over what? Go ahead.
I gloat over my enemies.
Gloat over which enemies?
I rejoice in your deliverance.
What deliverance? So of course they're going to say have an debate, but those words don't apply to someone who wanted to have a kid. Everybody knows that. Everybody recognizes that these words. It's a cute midrash to get out of it, but of course it's not sufficient. En kadosh kadonai.
There is no holy one like the Lord.
Ki en b'techa.
Truly there is none beside you.
Ve'en sur kelohenu.
There is no rock like our God.
Al terbuti debiru geboha.
Talk no more with lofty pride.
Don't talk with lofty pride. Yeseh atak mipichem.
Let no arrogance cross your lips.
Now, once you say Yeseh atak mipichem, that has very bad connotations, and it's used very few times. I will point it out over here. Ke'el deot Adonai.
The Lord is an all-knowing God.
The law nitkenu alilot.
By him actions are measured.
Keshet giborim hatim.
The bows of the mighty are broken,
V'nechshalim azpayu.
and the faltering are girded with strength.
Sebim balehem niskaru.
Men once sated must hire out for bread.
Urebim hadelu.
Men once hungry, hunger no more.
This is all about, the whole Hannah is about reversal of fortunes, right? Reversal of fortune.
While the barren woman bears 7,
V'rabat banim umlala.
the mother of many is forlorn.
Adonai neni umhayeh.
The Lord deals death and gives life.
Morid she'ol vaya.
Casts down into Sheol and raises up.
Adonai morid umashir.
The Lord makes poor and makes rich.
Mashpil af meromim.
He casts down, he also lifts high.
Mekim ma'afar dal.
He raises the poor from the dust,
Mashporteri nebion.
lifts up the needy from the dunghill,
Loshib even dibim.
setting them with nobles,
Chisei chavod yan hilem.
granting them seats of honor.
Kil Adonai mesuke eretz.
For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's.
Vayashet alehem tebel.
He has set the world upon them.
רגלי חסידיו ישמור,
He guards the steps of his faithful,
ורשעים בחושך ידמו,
but the wicked perish in darkness.
כי לא בכוח יגבר איש.
For not by strength shall man prevail.
אדוני יחתו מריביו,
The foes of the Lord shall be shattered.
עלה בשמיים יראם,
He will thunder against them in the heavens.
אדוני ידין אפסי ארץ,
The Lord will judge the ends of the earth,
וייתן עוז למלכו,
and he will give power to his king
וירם כרם משיח.
and triumph to his anointed.
Okay. Scholars have noted parallels between Psalm 75 and the prayer of Hannah and 1 Samuel before 1 Samuel. Before getting into the details of precise linguistic parallels, it is worth considering the parallels in narrative context, a prominent common element of the two poetic portions. Psalm 75 follows Psalm 50, 73, and 74 in the Asaph collection. The first two psalms accuse the contemporary priesthood of corruption, specifying adultery and theft. That's 50. If you see a thief, you run with him, and with the adulterers is your portion. By the way, when you say in 50, you know, of course, when you hear that word, and your halik is they're supposed to be Hilkiyahu. They're supposed to be right. God is my portion. The priest, God is his portion, right? So because you know what your halik is, your halik is not with God. Your halik is with the adulterers. You're a bunch of lowlifes, right? It's such a strong condemnation of the priests. Psalm 74 then describes the destruction of the temple in detail as a consequence of priestly corruption, and includes a prayer that Israel's wicked enemies not triumph. Finally, Psalm 75 depicts the reversal of fortune that will occur as the haughty, both the wicked priests and the Babylonian enemy, are brought low, and the currently humbled raised up. Ze yashpil v'ze yari. That's our Mizmor. Hannah's prayer, for those of you who forgot all of this since last week, in the last 10 weeks that we've been talking about this, you could look at the Mizmor if you don't remember, because I know half of you don't remember any of it. But in any event, we can't dwell on it tonight, so you could look at 75 for yourself and look up those words. That's the one where he gives the cost, and he gives out the cost. You're going to have to drink the cup of God's wrath. Hannah's prayer contains or is embedded within all these elements. The prayer concerns itself with reversal of fortune, with special relevance to her own predicament as a formerly barren woman, right? She's barren, and arrival of a sister wife with children, right? That's Penina, right? It is followed by an account of the priestly corruption of Eli's sons, who stole from temple offerings and who were guilty of promiscuity as well, reminiscent of the harsh words of Psalm 50. Finally, 1 Samuel 3 proceeds to describe the destruction of the priestly tabernacle at Shiloh. The connection between the psalm and the prayer of Hannah runs deeper than their, than their similar contexts, however, to actually shared language and theme words. Theme words from 75 have been highlighted below. I'll read them to you. Right? And then it says, and then the Lord, that's in verse, we're in verse 3, kenu alilot. So those words, Badonai Rama Karni, in verse 1, and in verse 3, Tidabiru and Atak and Nitkenu, and in verse 7, Meshpil Af Miromim, and in verse 8, Yarim, and in verse 9, Urshaim Behoshik Hidamu. These words are direct these words are direct linguistic allusions. In the first and last verses, the three words relating to the raising of the horn, and now Mizmor of the speaker, and God's anointed, respectively, mirrors Psalm 75's use of the same words, both to warn the haughty not to raise up their horns. You remember, Morris? You want to read that from 75? Al Tarim. There you go. That's the right. Don't lift up your horns, right? To God, right? Right. Don't lift up your horns, right? And to foretell a time when God raises up the horns of the righteous after smashing those of the wicked. Where does it say that? Right? Exactly. Verse 3 refers to haughty ones daring to speak haughtily with attack. In verse 3, it uses that word attack. It's an important word in the Hannah story. Coming from their mouths. The latter is a particularly rare word, attack, right? They speak, you see, you want to quote those words, attack?
Yeah.
From Hannah. No, from Hannah.
Oh. Which passage?
3. Yaseh.
Let no arrogance cross your lips.
Right. So that word with coming from their mouths, this is the latter is a particularly rare word occurring only 4 times in Scripture. 2 of them being this attestation and the parallel admonition to the boasters in Psalm 75, not to speak with a neck of attack. Al tidabiru b'savar, attack.
Arrogant neck.
An arrogant neck. You know, when you walk around like that, you know, right? That's that imagery. This word is typically translated to mean something like arrogance, which accurately conveys its usage. To speak with an arrogant neck or throat would appear to be an idiomatic usage, something like the biblical idiom, a stiff-necked people, am kishe oref. So I'm savaratak. Don't speak with savaratak. So it's idiomatic. In any event, the 2 usages here are linked by haughty speech, the unusual word atak, and its association with the speech organ, whether the throat or the mouth. The prayer and psalm alike promise that the arrogant speaker of attack will be brought low by God's judgment. You know, he tells them in 75, it's very, very important in 75 that you recognize, just so we say it, Amarti lahalolim al taholu. Don't boast, right? You remember we said laholalim is that Tehillim, you remember what we say about holalim li? Holalim is the term, that's in 75:5. That's a term that is used in Tehillim to talk about priests, not to talk about boasters. He uses the term holalim because what are priests supposed to be doing? Saying Hallel, right? Right. It's called.
So it's a new coined word. It's a coined word based on it.
That's correct.
The negative coinage of a positive word.
That's correct. The word is Hallel. So he calls them holalim. Holalim meaning they bless, they praise themselves, right? That's the typical, the overwhelming attitude of arrogant, self-centered, selfish people into themselves, right? So his opening words after he hears that it's not going to be, that it doesn't get better after the Selah, to remind you all, Amarti laholalim al taholu. I told the holalim don't do it, right? And to the wicked not to lift up their horns. So there's the attack, right? There's the idea, al taholu, al tarimu lamaron kamlechem. Don't lift up to the marom, the one on high, your horns. Tedabiru b'savar attack, speaking with an attack neck, right? And then he tells them the follow-up to that. As you know, it's not you're not going to get any help. You're finished, right? So In any event, the two usages here are linked by haughty speech, the unusual word atak and its association with the speech organ, whether the throat or the mouth. The prayer, the psalm alike promise that the arrogant speaker of atak will be brought low by God's judgment. An additional common word is nitkenu, with its partner in Psalm 75, verse 4, tikanti. If you remember, God tells him, right? Nimogim eres v'chol yoshveha, the land and all of its inhabitants are in question mark, verse 4. The land and all of its inhabitants are melting away. And itikanti amudeha. I set up its foundations perfectly. And you guys, you blew it. Everything was good. Don't come and throw it at my lap, God is telling him. Anitikante amudeha. So I'm pointing out in the commentary over here, the word nitkenu with its partner, v'lo nitkenu alilot, with its partner in 75.4 tikanti, right? The former may be parsed one of two ways, depending on whether the kireh uchtiv, you see the word v'lo no, v'lo to, right? The Masoretic reading is law, lamed vav, law nitkenu alilot, whereas the Masoretic text is lo nitkelu anilot, no, with an aleph, right? They did not. Either is intelligible and fits into a poetic contrast consistent with the style of the prayer. In both readings, the word nitkenu should be understood to refer to the justice, that is measuredness, of scale 18, if we have time, we'll look at it, of human actions. According to the first parsing, the statement lo nitkenu alilot proclaims that God, a God of knowledge, El Deot, decides what actions are allowed to succeed or fail, endure or fade. The statement is thus a warning to the haughty that their arrogance and implicitly their misdeeds will not go unpunished. Alternatively, by the other parsing, the actions alilot may be exclusively those of the haughty and they are unjust. Lo nitkenu, they are not correct, right? And the warning is that because God is a knowing God, he will soon right the imbalanced scales of justice. Either reading is a fitting connection to Psalm 75's powerful response to Psalm 74. After a nearly accusatory prayer begging God to end, you notice I said nearly accusatory. He's almost accusing God of, what is with you? Right? Almost. I didn't say it all the way. Right? Nearly accusatory prayer, begging God to end the excessive, intolerable destruction wrought upon Israel. Every time I read this these days, I never, in the 50 years, right, ever in my life, was in the middle of a war when I was talking and saw it. So when I would say, after nearly accusatory prayer of God, excessive, intolerable destruction wrought upon Israel. Excessive and intolerable occurrences of October 7th. Tonight is Yom HaSa'ut. We're celebratory, so, but it's a sort of, it's a,
I was just watching the news today.
it's more conservative.
Yeah, and they discussed it. They almost didn't have it at all, or they were gonna have it as regular. So they struck
A balance, yeah.
My
like
son
fireworks,
was
no fireworks.
Send me a lot of videos.
What is that?
No fireworks, yeah, right.
You have a copy of the codex? Look,
I never looked. Yeah, I have it downstairs. Yeah. So the reader will recall, right upon Israel. God responds in Psalm 75. The reader will recall that Psalm 74 made heavy use of time words as theme language and included several questions to the effect of, when will this end? How long will this go on? Why have you abandoned us forever? In response to these questions, God responds quite directly. At the time I choose, I judge fairly. Though all the earth and its inhabitants are melting away, it is I who measured out its foundations. God's judgment is fair and well considered, and God set a perfect foundation for the earth. This response of the psalmist mirrors God's to Job, to Iyov. Where were you when I set down the foundations? How long ago was that, Mars? How long? About
13.8.
13.8 billion. Where were you 13.8 billion years ago when I set this up? your questions. The psalmist, or in similar circumstances, Iyov, must recognize that divine justice is unimpeachable, whatever tragedies and iniquities they witness. Inequities are the product of human failings, not divine ones, and indeed, hard to swallow, but a fact. And indeed, a main theme of both the prayer and the psalm is that by God's judgment, these iniquities will be righted, though it may not be immediate, as Psalm 75 makes clear.
I was bringing up that it says, I think he said, and it's going to end.
Yeah, the similarities are overwhelming. That's why I included it in the commentary. You can't leave 75 without talking about Hannah. Impossible, right?
A lot of references to Keren.
Overwhelming, yes, because the Keren, remember, represents the success or the failure, the arrogance or not, right?
To me, it comes to mind Moshe. Adam or I think, right? Isn't it
Right.
a reference to Moshe,
Right.
But
In a positive way. The use of the word nitkenu to refer idiomatically not just to measuring or weighing, but in particular to meting out justice is especially recognizable in a prophecy from Yehezkel 18. You all have Tanakh, you can look it up. God rejects the complaint that any divine judgment has been unjust or that the sins of the fathers have been unfairly visited upon their sons.
No.
In fact, it is the sons whose behavior continues to be unjust. Note the following usages. Take a look at Yehezkel 18:25. Va'amartim, everybody have it? I'll wait for you to get it. Va'amartim, and you say, God is telling the people, the nation. There's a conversation taking place between God and the nation, and their claims that they're bringing against. Joe, you have your skill?
Yeah.
Why don't you help? There you go. You want 18,
25.
verse 25. Right? V'amartem, lo yitachen derech Adonai. God's ways. Yeah, you have English, Mars. You could read. It's nice if you read English.
The way of the Lord is unfair.
Unfair, right? Shemuna Beit Yisrael. You say I'm unfair. Listen, Beit Yisrael. Hadarchi lo yitachen.
Is my way unfair?
Is my way unfair? Hello, darchem lo yitachenu. Isn't it your way that's unfair? I'm the unfair one. Isn't it amazing, Lee? You have the English thing. Isn't it amazing? God talks to him. You said I'm unfair. How about you're the ones that are unfair? The conversation takes place like two people in a room, right? And you're hearing God having this interaction. I'm the one that's unfair. You're the one that's unfair. You're coming and bringing charges. B'shum sadik mitzid kator ba'asa avil umet alehem ba'avlo asher asa yamut.
When a righteous person turns away from his righteousness and does wrong, he shall die for it.
Ubeshuv rasha merish'ato asher asa v'yas mishpat ustaka hu et nafsho yehayeh.
He shall die for the wrong he has done. And if a wicked person turns back from the wickedness that he practiced and does what is just and right, such a person shall save his life.
V'yir'eh v'yashuv v'yashuv mikol peshav asher asa hayo yehayeh lo yamut.
Because he took heed and turned back from all the transgressions that he committed, he shall live, he shall not die.
V'amru Beit Yisrael lo yitachen derech Adonai.
Yet the house of Israel say, the way of the Lord is unfair.
Haderachai lo yitachenu.
My ways
Beit
unfair.
Yisrael.
House of Israel,
Halo derechechem lo yitachen.
it is your ways that are unfair.
Further links between Hannah's prayer and the Asaph collection in verse 3 will be addressed at the end of this subsection of the study. So you see, this statement, ani tikanti, is a defense, right? Right? The whole land's melting away. Ani tikanti amudea. I set it up fair. I set it up correctly. I set it up right? Everything was perfect for you, so to speak. Something like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? It was all good. You had food, you had thing, you had life, you had good life, you had everything available to you, right? And then what did you do? you blew it, right? So, moving on toward the end of the prayer, the seventh verse represents what can be called a summary of the major themes of 75 in the prayer of Hannah. The notion of reversals of fortune to the right and the inequities present in the world. The haughty will be brought low and the humble will be raised up. This is expressed with nearly identical language in both pieces. The psalmist warns the boasters of Psalm 75 regarding God that Ze yashpil v'ze yarim. Here, Hannah refers to God as mashpil af miromim. It is surely no accident that the root rum provides a theme word in each of these pieces of biblical poetry. Verse 8 repeats it with the phrase Me'ashpot Yarim Ebyon, which is reminiscent not only of the word Yarim in Psalm 75, but also of the psalmist's plea in Psalm 74 not to abandon Ani ve'ebyon Yehalelu Shemecha. Verse 9 refers directly to the wicked Reshaim, leading up to the conclusion of the prayer of Hannah on a note similar to the final statement in Psalm 75. I will smash all the horns of the wicked. Finally, the last verse, as mentioned above, concludes on the same thematic note as the opening of Hannah's prayer, the raising of horns. Now of God's anointed, in the first verse, the speaker of the prayer is the one whose horns is raised. It is not inconceivable that both these verses refer to the speaker. This is strongly suggestive of the conclusion of Psalm 75, Tiromamna Kernot Sadiq. Besides the highlighted direct linguistic allusions, there are more synonyms and equivalent concepts shared between the psalm and the prayer. For example, Artarbu Tedabberu Geboha Geboha is a nearly identical admonition to Al Taholu. A similarity further emphasized by the intertextual continuation Yasa Atak Pichem Tedabberu Visavar Atak. The common theme of reverse fortunes present in both passages, summarized by the shared reference to God as bringing low and raising up, is placed in the context of divine justice. Psalm 75 uses the verse, Ki Elohim shofet ze yashpil v'ze yarim. It's overwhelming, right? It's amazing to assert this outright, whereas the final verse of the prayer of Hannah foresees that God will judge all the earth, Yadin of Se'aretz. Right? Sure. Having begun to compare the psalm and the prayer through their common language, it is now instructive to fully lay out the structure of the prayer as a self-contained unit. In the following chart, I'm skipping the chart, can't see it, what's going, what's the middle, I'm going to pass all of that, and I'm going to pass all of the structural aspects, because there are, how many words there are in her prayer. Just to tell you very quickly, in Hannah's prayer, there are 104 words. Right? What's 104? 26, and 26, right? All the way through, right? So, of course, it's critical, the center of it, all of these things are really, really very potent, but for purposes of time, we're going to skip all of that now. And we're going to turn to Iyov. The last one. I want to do that because we have about 25 minutes left, and I'd like to now talk about Sefer Iyov, the entire book, which should take about a year to talk about, right? 5-10 minutes. So I talk about the whole book in its totality. And because the connections are so potent, 75, therefore, crosses over many aspects of Tanakh. As we said in the commentary in volume 2, it's going to bring all of these down and going to make comments about all of them. So we're going to conclude with the connections to Iyov. Psalm 75 makes use of imagery which seems closely intertextual with the end of the book of Iyov. As both portions of biblical poetry concern themselves with God's justice coming to the righteous after calamity, it is worthwhile to explore these relationships, as the connections seem to reference one another to some degree. In particular, the part of Iyov which contains God's response to Iyov contains the parallels. when God finally comes into the scene in Iyov. He steps in. You all know the structure of Iyov? No. Iyov opens up with the story about, go ahead, Morris, tell him about the opening.
Opening, there's a guy, Iyov, he lives in,
He's Ish Tam Yasad Samira Vire Elohim. You could translate those words for everybody. Ham,
blameless,
Yashad,
upright,
upright, Samira, turns away
well,
from
Virei Elohim, feared God,
fear God,
Besad Meran,
and turning-
shunned evil.
and he shuns evil. Okay, go ahead. Give them the picture now.
So he's, I don't know, you want me to read the English of the first chapter?
You don't have to, they all know the story.
Okay.
Do you know the story, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
Said
it,
the
you know it,
structure.
you know it.
Structure.
No, no,
Yeah,
not
the
the structure.
structure.
Structure, this, no, just to tell you structurally what happens. It's okay, but you know the story. They're gonna come. The Satan, the adversary is gonna come, and you're gonna. The imagery is God sitting with his court, right? And they come and they make claims, and the claims are.
God tells him, did you see Iyov? He's such an unbelievable individual. He says, oh,
So
that-
of course, anybody reads this goes like this. What are you telling him that for? What are you talking about the guy? What are you instigating for, right?
So,
Money.
God tells him, do whatever you're gonna do. He'll hold up.
Right. You can read those particular words in English to them, right?
So the Lord said to the adversary, have you noticed my servant Iyov? There is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil. The adversary says, Iyov not have good reason to fear God? What is you who fenced him around, him and his household and all that he has? You have blessed his efforts, that his possessions spread out in the land. But lay your hand upon all that he has, and he will surely blaspheme you to your face.
Big deal. Everything's good with him. So he says, I love you. Push him up against the wall. Let's see what happens to him when you challenge him, right?
Right.
So what does God tell him? Just don't you touch him. You can do whatever you want. Keep your hands off of him, right? Don't touch him. It says, and this Satan. Of course, there's no such thing as Satan. Of course, this is meant to be a story. Of course, God's not meeting with anybody. Of course, intelligent people are supposed to take this as imagery, right? God is with his court. He's sitting with his court. There's the guy in court. There's the prosecutor, the defense, right? And in the court, one guy gets up and says, you like it. It's a big sketch, right? Which goes on in courts, of course, right? Goes on. There are things like that. And there are times when a good leader will say, that's not true. He's not a good guy because of that. He's a good guy because he's really a good guy, and you don't know what you're talking about, and he's defending him. Okay? And then he goes out, and his children are eating, and then what happens to them? They have a party. The whole family's together. All his sons and daughters are together in a party, right? Go ahead.
One day, as his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the house of their eldest brother, a messenger came to Iyov and said, the oxen were plowing, and the she-asses were grazing alongside them when Sabians attacked them and carried them off and put the boys to the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you.
Everybody's dead. I'm the only one who made it back.
Right. And then while he was speaking, another guy came in.
Now that's important. Lee, why does it say while he was speaking? Cumulative effect. If it would have just been that, he would have been devastated, maybe not recuperated. But as he's hearing the words, there's another guy who comes riding back from him because the cumulative effect of the blows are beyond comprehension. That's the way the story is set up for you. While he's talking,
right, another one comes in. God's fire fell from heaven and took hold of the sheep and the boys and burned them up. I alone have escaped to tell you.
Another guy who's an escape.
Another guy comes in. A Chaldean formation of
Chaldean
formation of 3 columns made a raid on the camels and carried them off and put the boys to the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. And then-
Business is now gone.
Yep.
His entire business structure is right, yeah.
And then this one was still speaking when another came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking in the house of their eldest brother, when suddenly a mighty wind came from the wilderness. It struck the four corners of the house, let it collapse upon the young people, and they died. I alone have escaped to tell you.
They're not left now, right? Go ahead.
Then Job arose, tore his robe, cut off his hair, threw himself on the ground and worshipped. He said, naked came I out of the mother's womb.
Arom yasati mibet, most famous words. Arom yasati mibet in me, Arom ashu.
Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there.
Right? Ashuv Shema. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach.
The Lord is given, and the Lord is taken away.
Yihishem Adonai miorach.
Blessed be the name of the Lord.
You've heard that word in a funeral. Before zot, with all of this, lo hata Iyov lo natan tifla Elohim.
Iyov did not sin, nor did he cast reproach on God.
Okay, then we get back to the scene of the court. God is standing is presiding over his court, and the adversary tells. The word Satan, by the way, means adversary. You know that. Doesn't mean Satan. Satan is the way the goyim thinks is a guy with a pitchfork walking around with a tail.
Word Satan.
Right.
Yeah.
That means the adversary.
Right.
The word means the adversary, right?
They transliterated it and used the word.
Yeah, transliterated, and they say he's the guy walking around with a pitchfork. Right. Right. Ila Satan. He tells, where are you coming from? He says, Mishut Bars, checking out everything in the land, going back and forth. You know, I've been doing my thing. So he says, did you see my man Iyov? Again, the words that opened up the story. Did you see? He's Tam Yashad, turns away from evil. Ordeno Mahazik B'Tumor, still holding on to his integrity. But to see Tani Bolaba, and you incited me to
destroy him
for no reason. For no reason. What was the good of doing it? But you see, he had it was a wasted experiment. Vayana Satan et Hashem Yimad. Or that order, skin for skin. But a person, watch what happens when it comes to his own body, to his own life. Yeah. Ulam the guy atzmo touches bones, touches skin. In Lord, if not to your face, he will bless you. Of course, doesn't mean bless. It's right. It switches the word for. It means curse over here. So he'll bless you. He won't say to God he'll curse, right? Okay, you have him. Don't you touch his life. Now he doesn't tell him don't you touch his body. He says don't you dare and kill him. They say go ahead, Mars.
Right.
Boils, bad, skin disease, from head to toe, from toe to head. Right.
Severe inflammation.
Right. And he takes a what do you call
Shirt.
a shard, yeah. And he uses it to scratch himself. And he's sitting in the earth. So now, I'll do that. So now he takes he uses that. What do you see when I'm going to ask Lee? What do you see when you look at the scene now? When you look at Iyov, what do you see? No, you see a head sticking out of the ground. Just a head, right? He's in the ashes.
He's buried.
Right, he's buried. So now the story's got you with the mind, right? You're just seeing his head. Nothing is visible everything is gone, everything is destroyed, and it's purposely, of course, wanting you to see the imagery of dealing of now with by having only a head. What does it mean, Morris, when you only see a head?
Nothing left but his own mind.
His own mind. You are now in his mind. Everything that will be taking place will be with his internal conflict. Everything that's going to go on is going to be that internal conflict, right?
Physical is done.
Next,
Right,
left.
physical. is
Right.
done.
Now you've got you're in his mind. The scene is set up for you to see the problem, right? So his wife tells him, you're still holding on to your integrity. Bless God and die. That's his wife who loves him. Right? His wife says, what are you doing? Who wants to go on living anymore? Just when you'll do it. And die.
Wait, so what-
You speak like one of the low-life G's in the street? You mean we take good, but we don't take the bad when it comes? With all of that, he never made. Read the English now.
For all that, Iyov said nothing sinful.
Did not sin with his lips.
Did not sin with his lips. What does that mean?
He never thought about it.
He didn't sin with his lips. What's going on in his brain right now?
He's a human being. I don't know what to tell you. what
Of
is-
course.
What does the wife represent?
It represents that part of his personality that's saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? When you have conflict in you, the wife represents the inspiration for the
Negative.
reverse one in this case. Sometimes it's for the positive one. So the wife plays the role. That plays the role of him saying, what are you doing? The wife, by the way, is compassionate. She's compassionate when she says this. What are you doing? You suffer. It doesn't pay to go on anymore. That may mean for herself too. It doesn't mean that pay to go on, right? It is. It's a deep level of his consciousness that is dealing with this, and that's what she represents. Because of course, if you think about it in a reality sense, she's what's left of her. The fact that she's not
I'm
dying.
just asking why the wife. Couldn't have been a-
Because that's how you talk about the other aspect of your personality in many cases. That's why. That's how you describe the internal conflict. So that's of course only the same thing. Yeah. That's right. Right. The one who cares about him the most, loves him the most, interacts with him the most, and you assume everything is good with them. Everything is fine internally. But now there's a part of him that says, you're wasting your time to go on living. His three friends hear about it, right? It called it Azot that came to him, and they come each from his place, and the three people's names are Eliphaz HaTemani, Bildad HaShuhi, and Sophar HaNaamati. Of course, those names all imply something about the three. These people are going to represent the three main philosophies that there are in the world about how to deal with Sadiq V'Ratlo and Rasha V'Tovlo, the theodicy. Bad God, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? They're going to represent different aspects, right? And they come and they sit down, they come to console him. When you say they come down to console him, Morris, explain, what does it mean if you're talking about philosophies? How do they come to console him?
They're trying to make logic of, right. Make
He
sense of this.
internally is thinking of these philosophies. Remember, put all of this in the mind now. The three people sitting down is him, right? Now, thinking about this, and he's thinking about these major philosophies because he is, what is going on, right? So he's torn to shreds, and he's dealing with it, and they represent the three major ways that this is approached. And lenahamo, what is he looking to do? He's looking to console himself. He's looking to get some kind of
You can figure it out.
relief of some sort to go on living, to function, to understand. Yeah. Why? Why? They assume it in him, they see him from far away, they don't recognize him.
Yeah, because
That means he doesn't recognize exactly. They assume Kolan, they cool, and they're crying. That's him crying. They could ish me'ilo, that's him. They zaku afal roshahim, that's him. Hashamayma, they throw afar. Vayishbu ito la'aretz, and they sit with him for 7 days. So a week goes by. V'shav'at le'lod, 7 days and 7 nights, of course, with the implications of 7 and 7. And dober ilav dabar. Nobody's speaking one word to him. Ki gadal hake'ev gadil hake'ev me'od, because the
How great was it?
the suffering so great. That means he now thinks of these ideas, but he's incapable of having dialogue with himself. That means he's in a state of grief and paralysis. Is right? He's paralyzed with grief. And at that juncture, he patach Iyov et pihu v'kalel et yomo, and then he curses his day. And without telling you what he says, you could say it in English, Morris.
Perish the day on which I was born.
The day that I was born on,
And the night
that
it
day
was
should perish. The night that was announced in the community. Oh, Subby, you had a boy, Subby on deck, in Arabic. Oh, that day, that night when they went around and they said, oh, you had a boy, right? Let that day be darkness.
May God above have no concern for it. May light not shine on it. May a pole lie over it. May what blackens the day terrify it. May obscurity carry off the night. May it not be counted among the days of the year. May it not appear in any of its months. May that night be desolate. May no sound of joy be heard in it. May those who cast spells upon the day damn it. Those prepared to disable the Viatan, may its twilight stars remain dark. May it hope for light and have none. May it see the glimmerings of the dawn, because it did not block my mother's womb and hide trouble from my eyes.
Why the heck didn't they block my mother's womb? And then I never would have come out. Curse the day he's born. Madua kedemuri berkaim. Uma shadaim ki inak.
I'll translate one verse earlier. Why did I not die at birth, expire as I came forth from the womb? Why were there knees to receive me, or breasts for me to suck?
Ki ata shachafti v'eshkot.
For now would I be lying in repose,
Yashanti. Right? As yanuahli.
sleep and at rest.
I would have been at rest. What the heck did I have to be born? Etc. Etc. I'm gonna skip now. We see these same words. Lee, where do we see these same exact words? Yep. I am. Do you remember where in Yirmiyah?
Yeah, at the,
I'll open it up for you, right? Open up to chapter 15. Now I want to get you a better one. This one. Open up to chapter 20, verse 14. Hey, how you doing, Sammy? Good to see you. Rabbi El Nekaveh, hi. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Arur Hayom, asher yulati bo yom asher latani imi alihi baruch.
Accursed be the day that I was born. Let not the day be blessed when my mother bore me.
Arur ha'ish asher bisad et abi lemor yulad lecha ben zachar sameach samehahu. Cursed be the guy who said mabruk on the subby for your son. You can't get more powerful than that, right? Go ahead, read the exact translation.
Accursed be the man who brought my father the news and said, a boy is born to you, and gave him such joy.
He told him mabruk, mabruk. Curse that guy. Ve'ya ishahu ki'arim asher afach Adonai.
Let that man become like the cities which the Lord overthrew without relenting.
And let him hear za'akah b'boker and tu'ah b'yetz ha'orayim. Right?
Because he did not kill me before birth, so that my mother might be my grave, and her womb big with me for all time.
Now, those words are very important because you all know these words. Asher lo motatni mirachem, v'tehi li imni kivri. My mother, that I didn't die in the womb, and my mother would have been my grave. Listen to those words. Verahma harat olam. Hayom harat olam hayom, right? And her womb would have been in an everlasting conception. It would have gone on for eternity. You can't get more deeply, it's powerful. Why did I have
an issue from the womb to see misery and woe, to spend all my days in shame?
Okay. Now, that imagery, I had to take the time today. I know it's late, and we only have a few minutes left, and we're going to have to continue next week, but I couldn't properly deal with 75 and its connection to Iyov and without you feeling what he puts down for you to feel it. You know, you can't just say this. You have to sort of read it, and then after you read it and extensively, the impact comes back on you. The despair is beyond, and you hear the depth of his suffering, right? It's beyond. Now, they're going to have conversations, and the three of them are going to attempt, he is going to attempt to answer the questions. How is he going to attempt to answer the questions, Morris? Give us an example.
In
Iyov, what do they tell him? You know why this is happening?
because you deserve it. You sinned.
You sinned.
So
what does he say? No, I didn't.
Must have said.
Huh?
They said he must have said.
Must have sinned. Right. So, of course, that's him saying, I must have done something wrong. And then he goes deep into himself and goes, no, I did not do that. No, I didn't. He doesn't say he's sinless, he's guiltless, he's perfect.
Saying it's not the reason.
He says, no, this has nothing
In
to
other
do
words,
with that.
I didn't do anything deserving. of
Not
this.
deserving of this. I did things that well, my friends, we got drunk one night. Okay. Right? Yirmiyah didn't get drunk one night. Okay. But let's say he's remembering something in his youth. Okay, so what? That's not justification. Don't work. And he's right, of course. Of course, he's right. There's nothing to do with this, right? He's lived his life. He's lived his life in the finest way that you could possibly conceive. That's his whole life. That's how he's lived. That's how he brought up his kids. That's how he brought up his family. That's how he did everything. So he can't do it. What's another possibility?
I tell him, God is testing you to prove you and to prove you with things to this effect.
And he goes, baloney. Tells him you don't know what you're talking about. Another one?
Well, what else? They say, I don't know.
That one's actually right.
Yeah, that one's pretty right.
What?
He's that thing.
God's testing him.
I don't think so.
Well, what
Had
is
is that
exactly?
the
I
deal
mean,
with
that's
this?
I don't think so.
It's that time. It seems like it's a test.
Yeah.
No,
It
but
seems like-
the testing is you're doing things wrong, and these are being done to you to cause you to do something more correct. In other words, not a reward and punishment direct,
No,
Right.
but
just to see how faithful you are.
no,
He's saying-
not that. saying this is being, you're doing things wrong and you're being, God is sending these things against you to cause you to consider what you're doing.
Correct.
Wake you up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He tells them all, you don't know what you're talking. Go to the end of the book. All the way to
But
chapter.
the main thrust of all the guys, there's 4 guys, not 3, because another guy is going to come later, is that they're telling him God controls everything, God does everything perfect, and whatever is happening to you is a result of the fact that it's your fault, it's your children's fault, you did something wrong, you're doing things wrong, you need to improve, look inside, nothing that God does is out of whack,
Right,
ever.
right.
Right.
There's always cause and effect.
So what you're saying is.
And you know what he tells them? You know what he tells
Yeah.
them? You don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Right, so what you just said is there's no such thing as bad things happening to good guys.
Right.
He tells them, no, bad, wrong, I don't accept, it's evil, there's no justification, take a walk.
That is the best way to
And
say
God,
they say to him, there is no theodicy. Good happens to the good, bad happens to the bad. End of the story.
and he tells them, take a walk. And God comes in and says, Iyov min Sarah.
38.
God answers him from the whirlwind. Stop. Whenever you see whirlwind, from the whirlwind, what does who has a whirlwind? Where do you know the famous whirlwinds? Who?
Huh?
With the water.
Yeah.
And the owl goes up in the whirlwind.
Yeah.
Who else? We talked about Eliyahu.
What's the
Yeah.
Hebrew word?
Who now we're talking another whirlwind. What? Yonah. What happens? He's on the boat.
Huge storm.
A whirlwind, and he uses the
Trying
same
to
exact word,
Run from the
right?
responsibilities, right?
He doesn't want to do it. He has to go tell the Nazis to make Tishu B'Av. And he says, let them all die. And God says, what if they make Tishu B'Av? And he says, I want them to make Tishu B'Av. Let them all burn for what they did. They don't deserve Tishu B'Av. They should die, right? I'm not going. So he gets on a slow boat to China, right? Yeah, that's what he thinks. That's a boat to Tarshish means a slow boat to China, right? Because in other words, I'm never going to get there, right? So he answers him. Now go read those words that God's first words to him. He tells him,
Mise?
yeah,
In the English, yeah?
yeah.
Who is this who darkens counsel, speaking without knowledge? Gird your loins like a man, I will ask you, and you will inform me.
Ezor kegever halasecha. Where do we see the words Ezor kegever halasecha? The classic, gird your loins, Yirmiyah in his opening prophecy, right? That's the exact words that he used. Efo hayitei b'yosdi aretz,
Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations?
haged im yadata binah,
Speak if you have understanding.
mi samim adeha ki teda,
You know who fixed its dimensions,
o minata aleha kav.
or who measured it with a line?
Keep going now.
Onto what were its bases sunk? Who set its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all divine beings shouted for joy. Who closed the sea behind doors when it gushed forth out of the womb? When I clothed it in clouds, swaddled it in dense clouds, when I made breakers my limit for it and set up its bars and doors and said, you may come so far and no farther. Here your surging waves will stop.
Now read verse 15.
Their light is withheld from the wicked, and the upraised arm is broken. Have you penetrated the sources of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been closed to you? Have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you surveyed the expanses of the earth? If you know of these, tell me.
Okay. Now we're going to skip all the way until
Right, you know, the interesting would be, and two, the believe God, that's what he uses throughout the healing. God, understanding the, I'm gonna teach you God.
right. Correct. So he uses the term.
Yeah.
Yes, very big, very big. So now,
It's worth making the point that these last 4 chapters, when
Go ahead.
God answers him,
Yeah.
nobody understands what's being said over here.
Nobody.
That's traditional
Clueless.
academics, that nobody has any answer. They say that the answer is God's going like this. You don't know anything. It's beyond you. End of the story.
That's it. That's how they say. Where were you? Who are you to get
They say
involved in
the whole
this?
thing is
What do you know?
rhetorical.
Right.
It's, you don't know the answers to these questions. Nobody can answer the questions. I'm the only one who has the answers. And stop talking.
And stop trying to think about things that you don't know anything about. It's not true. And that's why it's important for us to talk tonight. I don't know. We have 5 more minutes and we're going to stop. We'll get as far as we can, and then we'll continue next week.
Let's just solve.
Vayan Adonai to Iyov. So then, in chapter 40, Vayan Adonai et Iyov, Vayomar Harob im Shaddai Yisor Mochiach Eloi Yanena.
Shall one who should be disciplined complain against Shaddai? He who arraigns God must respond.
Vayan Iyov et Adonai.
Iyov said in reply to the Lord,
Hen kaloti ma'ashibeka.
see, I am of small worth. What can I answer you?
Yadi samta lemorfi.
I clapped my hand to my mouth.
Ahat dibarti v'lo e'aneh.
I have spoken once and will not reply.
Ushtayim v'lo osif.
Twice
Right?
and will do so no more.
Vayan Adonai to Iyov bin Sarah.
Then the Lord replied to Iyov out of the tempest, said,
Ezor na kigel ha'atzecha ish alchav hodieni.
gird your loins like a man, I will ask, and you will inform me.
Ha'ath tafer mishpati tashi'eni leman tisdak.
Would you condemn me? Would you impugn my justice? Would you condemn me that you may be right?
You're going to tell me I'm off, and you say just to justify yourself. V'im zerah ke'elach
Have you an arm like God's?
ubekol kamo taram
Can you thunder with a voice like his?
adeh na gaon
Deck yourself now with grandeur
v'goba
and eminence.
v'hod v'hadar tilbash
Clothe yourself in glory and majesty.
hafetz abrot apecha
Scatter wide your raging anger
ur'eh kol ge'eh v'hashpilehu.
and see every man and bring him low.
Every arrogant man, ge'eh,
Every proud man, sorry.
every proud man. Good, see, I got it
Yeah.
right. Every arrogant man, v'hashpilehu.
And bring him low.
Re'eh kol ge'eh hachni'ehu.
See every proud man and humble him.
V'hadoch rishayim tahtam.
And bring them down where they stand.
Tomnam be'afar yahad.
Bury them all in the earth.
Bury them in the earth. Penehem habosh betamum.
Hide their faces in obscurity.
And then when you do that, v'gam ani odeka.
Then even I would praise you.
Ki toshia lecha yiminecha.
For the triumph your right hand won you.
Your right hand won you. You don't like what you see? Do something about it. That's the answer now at the end of the book. You don't like it? You don't like what you see? Don't come to me. Get up, stand up against evil, smash them out, get them out of the way, bury them, do whatever you have to do to eliminate evil from the world. And then I, right, will praise you. And then he tells him, and he describes, time is short, he describes to him in the first one, he describes a dinosaur, right? Mythical animals. One is a fire-breathing dragon. The other one is a huge, powerful dinosaur, that is impregnable. If you want to act in your life, act like you're one of those dinosaurs, act like a fire-breathing dragon. And he describes the fire-breathing dragon. He has scales, they shoot arrows on him, they bounce off of him. He looks at everybody who wants to come after him and he laughs at them. He laughs, you're coming after me? And if he doesn't like Godzilla, exactly, it's a fire-breathing dragon. Well, that's what Godzilla is, a fire-breathing dragon. But he's impregnable and he's untouchable. And he says you have to treat, Hashem, the Navi, uses the imagery of the fire-breathing dragon and the dinosaurs Of course, you're not supposed to, you're not expected to think, it's like saying, be Superman, be Superman. Nothing, you can fly, you can go faster than a speeding bullet, right? Buildings single bound. Treat yourself that way. Act like you're Superman. Live like you're Superman. Be courageous like you're Superman, and you will succeed. I'll be there with you. I'll help you, but it's your responsibility in this world to get rid of evil. Good? Is that right on target? When he finishes telling them that in 42, right?
Which
Right.
I'll quote the latest academic book that I read, which says, inexplicably, God and Iyov are reconciled.
Inexplicably. What's
Right?
inexplicable?
Well, Iyov's gonna say, you're right, right? So he goes, inexplicably, they're reconciled. We don't know why, right? I'm just saying that's the way they end it.
Which is amazing because clearly the end of the story is you are living in a world. I gave that world to you. I set it up right. Man has free choice. There's no fake free choice. It's a real free choice. You really have free choice. You really can do good. You really can do bad. Not fake bad, not sketch bad. You can really do bad. A guy can get a gun, walk up to a person, and shoot them, and they're innocent. Does it ever happen? Cain and Abel, the opening of the Torah. The two brothers. He's jealous of him. He's dead. We always talk about Cain. What happened to Abel? He's gone. He's gone. He never did anything wrong. True evil. True evil. That's from the beginning of the Torah. La peta hatat robetz ve'elecha v'tishukato v'atatum shol bo. Sin crouches at the door, right? And he desires you, and you have to reign over him. Of course, it's all about you. All that imagery is talking about you and your personality. So then, Iyov answers him. Let's just get to that part before we stop.
I know that you can do everything, and nothing you propose is impossible for you. Who is this who obscures counsel without knowledge? Indeed, I spoke without understanding
I'm sorry.
of things beyond me, which I did not know.
Shema na ve'anochi adaber ish alcha v'hodi'eni.
Hear now, and I will speak. I will ask, and you will inform me.
L'shem ha'ozen shema'ticha
I have heard you with my ears,
v'ata ani ra'atcha.
but now I see you with my eyes.
I heard about you, but now I see it. Al ken em as v'nihamti al afad va'efer.
Therefore, I recant and relent, being but dust and ashes.
Good.
He was in the dust.
The end of this story is that Iyov has all of the elements of what we see in 75. Ani Hashem, his answer, right, is Ani Hashem. And I set up everything perfectly for you, and there are going to be consequences to your actions. Right? Amarti laholim al tahol varashim al tarimu karim al tarimu lamarom kadmechet tidaberu b'savaratak. Right? I told them, you know what's going to happen? The end is going to come, and then there's going to be nothing, and you're going to suffer. You're going to drink the cup of God's wrath, and now you're drinking it, and that is the reality. And you're never going to be able to get out of this problem. Before we end the night, because we're saying, oh, everything is okay. And we're saying everything is okay. But what does Eliyahu have to say about this?
Yeah, he does not like
I
it.
don't like this. I don't like this, right? I'm out. I want her, let her die where she stands right now. Izebel, right? I don't like it, and he doesn't accept it. Who else doesn't like this answer? All the way in Bereshit. Esav. I don't need the Bechorah. I'm dying. This is all. I'm not going to be a rope. Who cares about? I'm around here. I'm alive now, and I'm gonna be dead. You take it.
All the hairy guys.
Abraham says, I thought if it when this, he still keeps going. He says, that's about Sidon. He says, I'm a father if he recognizes, but listen, save the city. Let's see if we have 40, 30, 20. But he gives up.
He accepts.
When he sees that he can't, that it's unstoppable. It's at a certain point in time, he has nothing to tell God. What should I do? I have no ground.
Say the next best test is the
Look, I could ask it to be another one of these things. Another one of these things. Another one. We'll talk.
It recurs.
Right. It's a recurring theme that's going to happen that's why we said at the center of Tehillim is the crux and most powerful question that you have to deal with. It coincides, don't forget, because it's easy to forget, with the religious establishment's corruption. Remember that. It is happening in the Vayikra counterpart, in Asaph. It is happening after the destruction of the temple, even though Jerusalem is going to be talked about, and they happen at the same time. That's not going to be till the 79th Mizmor. Remember that. This is going to happen is happening in the 75th at the middle now, where yes. The middle, the center, book 3, Vayikra, book 3, Asaph, book 3 middle, book 3 middle, high point. But a high point over here is dealing with the question. Iyov, we'll read this part next time when we get together. The end of the story is God gives him back, and instead of 7, whatever it was, he gets 14, and he has 3 daughters. Well, the most beautiful daughters in all the land, 7 sons, 3 daughters, and he tells you the names of the daughters. And next week we'll talk about the names of the daughters and what it means, and then we'll conclude 75 on that note. All right, folks, we have to stop at this point. If we had another hour and a half, we would be able to finish. I hope you enjoyed, everybody. Sammy, good to see you. Have a good one, Rabbi. On the Kabir was good.
Fantastic.
Okay.
It's like I only read Iyov. I never really studied it, and now I'm realizing it.
You're realizing, yeah. We will continue next week to talk more about this. We went, we did a recap in 42 seconds of the entire book, but
beautiful, amazing.
We'll
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
You too.
I didn't see
Thank you.
the cooking. I didn't see any cooking.
I know, I had to hide it. I didn't want to tempt everybody. Thank you.
Very good. Have a good one. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.